What's up, guys? It's Clay here with Pro Glass Windshield Repair. If you have made it to this point, you probably already know who I am. Welcome to the School Community Glass Masters Hub. This is going to be our first learning course, How to Repair a Rock Chip, Learning the Basics. A little disclaimer here, this is going to be a basic breakdown of a rock chip repair. For anybody who doesn't know how to do one and would like to learn, for anybody who is already a windshield repair technician but would like to have something to refer to just to remind them of some of the fundamentals. So welcome to How to Repair a Rock Chip, Learning the Basics. Now I have broken this course down into 13 steps that have been split up into 4 different sections. The first section is going to be inspection. The second section is going to be preparation. The third section is going to be repairing the brake, and the fourth section is going to be curing and finishing the brake. So it's a total of 13 steps, and I also have this in a Google Doc, which I will attach to this video so that you can have that for yourself as well. The first section, inspection. The first step in this section is you are going to want to inspect your brake to see what kind of damage we are working with, to determine what kind of brake we are working with. And in this case, the brake is just a circle. So this is what is called a bullseye or a full moon. It is just a circle. There is no legs, no lines, no fractures in it. Otherwise, it might be considered a combination brake, which is a brake that has a circular body with legs and lines also attached to it, or little micro fractures inside of the circle that we call the body of the brake. That would make it a combination brake. But in this case, it is just a circle, so therefore it is a full moon, aka a bullseye. That is what it is called in the windshield repair industry. So the second step in the first section is going to be you have to make sure that the damage is actually repairable. Now there is 3 things to consider when you are trying to determine whether the brake is actually repairable. First one is going to be, has the damage been previously repaired, or has somebody already attempted to repair the damage beforehand? Because in this case, if somebody has already tried to repair this brake, there is nothing more that can be done at that point. Now, there are certain cases where you can try to help your customer out, but my personal recommendation is if a damage has already been touched, don't touch it. It is not worth it at that point. A lot of the times they won't fill, and you could find yourself being liable in a case where it gets worse after you tried to salvage the failed repair, and now the customer is coming back to you. In these cases, it is better to just not even try to make it better. The second thing to consider is going to be, is the damage too severe? So in this case, this damage is very small, so we have nothing to worry about. I've repaired star brakes where the entire diameter of the chip, if you're including the legs, is about 2 inches, maybe 3. 3 inches is getting pretty big. Really anything beyond that, I would consider something that is not repairable. Now, it doesn't mean you can't do it. It is possible, and you definitely could get a successful repair that holds up. But again, it goes back to liability concerns. If you go ahead and you attempt to do the repair and it fails in the future, well, now it is on you. The customer is coming back to you. So it is better to just not repair very severe damages, or in the cases where it is possible and you do choose to do it, you make sure you explain to the customer the kind of scenario that is at hand, and you let them know that you are not liable for any kind of failure of the repair in the future. So the third thing to consider is the brake in the driver's line of sight. This is very important. In this case, the brake that we're going to be working with today is definitely not in the driver's line of sight. In fact, it is quite a fair distance away from the driver's line of sight. So in this case, our damage is obviously not previously filled because I made this brake to do this video. It is not too severe to repair, and it is not in the driver's line of sight. We are all good to go, and that sums up the inspection process. All right, going on to the second section out of 4, the preparation process. This is going to be broken down into 3 steps. Step number 1 of the preparation process is going to be clean the brake area with isopropyl alcohol, or an isopropyl alcohol based solution. And the reason you use isopropyl alcohol is because it is a flashing type of product. Pretty much what that means is when you wipe it on a surface, it on its own comes off the surface very quickly, aka flashes off the surface. Why do we want to use that specifically for cleaning the area of a rock chip repair? Well, that is because we don't want to use any solution that is going to cause any moisture or liquid particles to get inside of the brake, because that can impede your ability to fill it with resin completely, and this can cause the repair to fail. That is why we use isopropyl alcohol, because even if some does get in it, it flashes on its own. So there will be no liquid particles in the brake as long as you use isopropyl alcohol. So let's go ahead and clean this brake. And it doesn't take a lot. 1, maybe 2 sprays. Maybe 2 sprays. Maybe don't even need that. On the shop towel I have here, lint-free shop towel. And in that case, that is more than enough. Alright, so I got my isopropyl alcohol, my lint-free shop towel, and all we're going to do is pretty straightforward, just wipe it around the brake area. Alright, step number 2 in the second section, the preparation section. It would be to drill into the brake to create a pathway to fill it with resin, and then to pop a bullseye. Now, I will mimic it. I already did it for this brake because that's how I created this one. But so I can show you guys, I will go ahead and I will mimic exactly what I am talking about. So this here is a windshield repair drill. What you're going to do is you're going to find the impact point, which is where the rock hit to cause the rock chip in the first place. And all you're going to do is start drilling. And I'm not going to go any deeper because, like I said, I already did it. Just so you understand how deep to go, this is called a depth gauge. So pretty much what you're going to do is you're going to drill into that impact point until you get to the depth gauge. As you can see, there is a depth meter. It's that little stub at the bottom there. If you drill deep enough when you put this into the brake, it will be flush with the windshield. And then from there, you're going to want to pop a bullseye. Now what popping a bullseye is once you drill into the brake, you're going to take a tool like this. You can also use a sewing needle with anything, honestly, that has a little bit of weight to it, and just hit it, something like this. In fact, I will just use this. This is what I usually use in the field. And you just put it right there, and you tap until it opens up. I already did it like I said, so there's going to be no change here. But what will happen is when you do that, you're going to notice all of a sudden a circle form. It's going to look like a bubble. And what you just did is you opened up the brake so that now when you go to fill it, you have easy access and it fills properly. So the third and final step of the preparation process, this isn't something that is always necessary. It is going to be the moisture evaporation cycle. In this case, I actually created this brake, so I know there's no moisture in it. But if you're working in a very moist environment, maybe it was a rainy day, maybe there's literally water on the windshield. In that case, you definitely want to do a moisture evaporation cycle because there's going to be moisture particles in that brake. And if there is moisture particles in that brake, it is going to impede your access or the flow of resin, and it's going to prevent you from having a completely intact repair. I don't actually need to do it here, but just for demonstration, I will. And in this case, I just use a little torch. I find it to be very easy, but they actually do make something that is called a moisture evaporator. That's all it is. It plugs into the 12-volt insert that all vehicles have, or pretty much all vehicles. I'm not going to be showing you how to use this today, but they do make this tool. I find it a lot easier to use this because I don't have to go inside of the vehicle, plug this in. It just saves me a lot of time. So the way this works, we're using heat to cause any moisture in there to evaporate. One thing to be very mindful of, glass is very sensitive, especially when it comes to temperature. Shocking the brake too much and causing it to heat up too quickly or get too hot can cause the brake to spread. It can make it crack out. It has happened to me only like once, maybe twice. We want to gradually bring the brake to a warmer temperature. We don't want to bring it from cold to hot in a second. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to heat up the area around the chip, slowly working towards that chip in these circular motions. Eventually we will hone in on the chip, but we want to first warm up the area around the chip so we do not shock it. Gonna feel it. It's already starting to get pretty warm. It's because we're inside. It's like 70 degrees in here. Now that the glass is a little warm on the outside, we can hone in. And with a torch, it really doesn't take much. That is going to be more than enough. You're going to want to feel it too. Once it starts to like hurt you a little bit, like it burns just a little bit, you're definitely good. You don't even have to go that far, but you do want it to be like hot, warm to hot when you touch it. You don't want to just make it warm. You want it to be like warm to hot, maybe give you a little shock, but nothing more. All right, now we are all done with the preparation process. Third section, repairing the brake. This is going to be a 4-step section. This is called a bridge injector. This is what you use to inject windshield repair resin into the brake. So the first step in the third section, repairing the brake, is going to be apply suction sealant to your bridge suction cup and apply the injector onto the glass. So we're going to do that. Got my suction sealant, and that is more than enough. Suction sealant helps to keep good suction, as well as it allows you to move the injector around easily when it is on the glass. Now we're going to put on the glass. You don't want to put the injector on the glass like this, and I'll tell you why. Because you have suction sealant on here, and if it starts to drip, it's going to drip right into that brake. And I didn't catch me putting it on video. I was having trouble with the camera, but it's pretty straightforward. Just don't place the suction cup directly above the brake. And for step 2 and 3 in the repairing the brake section, I'm going to just break it down for you like this because I kept having camera troubles, and I realized as I'm editing I didn't actually get these 2 steps on video. Fortunately, they are pretty simple steps. So, step number 2 in the repairing the brake section is going to be to add resin to your injector. That's it. All you got to do is add resin. I would say for most brakes, I usually add around 7 drops, maybe 6. Sometimes if I'm dealing with a larger brake, I might go 10, 11, 12 if it's a larger brake. However, in this case, as I have mentioned, This is not a large break. It is quite small, maybe average. And so 5 to 7 drops should do. Maybe you don't even have to go 7, but keep one thing in mind, okay? You're filling it with 5 to 7 drops, not because it's going to take 5 to 7 drops to fill the break completely. The break could probably fill with just 2 drops. But the reason we put more in than what the break actually needs to be filled is because you want enough pressure in the injector, in the chamber of the injector, so that when you inject resin, there's enough pressure behind it and it can push the resin in. If you don't have enough resin in the injector, you're going to run into problems. You're going to notice resin is just not flowing to certain areas, and it is not because that area is not connected or some other reason. It can sometimes purely just be because you do not have enough resin in the injector and there's not enough pressure behind it. And another thing that can happen in this case is if there is not enough resin in the injector, when you go to inject, what the injector is going to try to do then is just push whatever it can in there, whatever else is in that chamber, which would be air. Okay, so that's another thing, is if you don't have enough resin in the injector, you could potentially push air into the break and you could be working against yourself there. The third step in the third section, repairing the break, is going to be to probe through the middle of your injector for at least 30 seconds into the impact point. So you are going to take your probe and you're going to put it through the middle of the injector into the impact point, apply light to mid pressure, maybe a little more pressure, and just flex through the impact point and allow resin to flow into that break. Give it at least 30 seconds. And this will help you because if you were to just go right into an injection cycle, you could potentially push air into the break and you could find yourself trapping air in the break, where there's going to be certain chambers of air now because you've applied so much pressure that it's going to be hard to get out. Okay, when you probe through the injector, it helps resin to flow in and air to come out. It helps resin to displace that air before you apply any pressure. Because you could imagine if you just throw it right on, well, there's air in that break. Yeah, you have resin in your injector, but there's air in the break. And if you just apply a ton of pressure at first, you could end up trapping that air. Because where does it have to go? You are applying pressure to it. So you're just going to force it in to the break for the most part. And probing through the middle of the injector for 30 seconds is going to help prevent that. The fourth and final step in the third section, go through a couple vacuum and injection cycles of about 2 to 3 minutes each, probing as needed. So using that probe to flex the glass. In this case, I'm not going to do that. A lot of other cases you do need to do that. In this case, I won't be doing that because this kind of break does not need it. There is no legs or lines or anything else other than that body, that circle. We're going to start with a vacuum cycle of about 2 minutes. Usually before I just leave the vacuum on, I will actually pull it over and over again. I'll just pump it and I can see air. When I do that, I see it open up and it's pulling air out little by little. All right, now that I pumped it for a little bit, about 10-15 seconds, we're going to put it on vacuum and leave it for about 2 minutes. All right, that's been about 2 minutes, and now I'm going to do an injection cycle. For an injection cycle, you take this is called a plunger, put it back into the center of the injector, and you're going to tighten it until you see the seal swell up on you. You're going to see it swell up. I'm seeing it now. and I have a decent amount of pressure on there. You don't need to tighten it up all the way. Sometimes I do, but you do want a good amount of pressure on there. So once it starts to swell up, give it like a few, maybe 4 more turns, and you should be good. Eventually you learn what the brake needs, and you don't necessarily go based off of a certain amount of turns. You get familiar with the injector and how much it swells up, and how much pressure it is putting on the glass. All right, so it's been about 2 minutes there. We're gonna pull it off the injection. We're gonna put the vacuum back on for about another 2 minutes. All right, we're gonna leave that for about a couple minutes. Okay, it's been about 2 minutes. We're done vacuuming, and now we're going to do our final injection cycle. So once again, put the plunger back in and tighten it until the seal starts to swell, and it's starting to do it now. So give it maybe 1, 2, 3 twists, and it should be enough resin pressure. All right, now we are done with our final injection cycle. So we are going to move on to the last section, the last 4 steps. Before we do that, we're going to take our injector off. So the way you want to do that is you want to bring it down to a neutral state. You don't want to bring it into a vacuum, just a neutral state. Slide it over, then bring it into a slight vacuum because we don't want resin to fall out. And go like that and turn it over immediately. All right, you're always going to get a little resin drippage, and then you want to swell your resin back up and put it on a slight vacuum. As you can see, we got a little drippage right there. We're just going to clean that up. Do not wipe over the impact point. Again, we don't want to contaminate the brake. All right, on to the final section, curing and finishing the repair. The first step in the final section of curing and finishing the repair is we're going to apply a drop of pit filler over the pit, and then we're going to put a Mylar tab on it. Pit filler is just another resin, but it's made to go in the pit. It's a little bit more durable since the pit is going to be on the surface of the glass. So we're going to apply the pit filler. Just 1 drop like that is enough. You want to make sure there's no bubbles. In this case, I don't see any. And what we want to do is, now that we see no bubbles, now that we know there's no bubbles, we can just lay the Mylar tab over like so. You don't want to apply any pressure at all. You just want to lay down the Mylar tab, because if you apply pressure, you can put a divot in the impact point and you won't realize it until you're done, until you scrape off all the resin. So we're just going to lay it down so we have a nice flush, even finish. All right, so the second step in the final section, we are going to take our UV curing lamp, just put it right over like so, with the impact point right in the center. We're going to plug it in, and we're going to hit this button. It's going to go through a minute curing cycle. While it is on the curing cycle, the red light is going to be flashing like so. Once it is done with the cycle, it will stop flashing. Now that the curing process is all done, see the light is solid, it is not flashing anymore. We're going to remove our UV curing lamp. I like to use the probe very gently on the suction cup. You don't want to, you want to preserve the life of your suction cups. We're going to remove our Mylar tab. As you can see, that resin is cured. Going to wipe any wet resin on top still. It doesn't look like we really have any, but still want to do that. Now we are on to our third step of the final section. You're going to take a razor blade like so at a 90-degree angle. You don't want to be on an angle like this, because we're not going like this. because we don't want to dig out the pit that we just filled. So we're going to go at a 90-degree angle and scrape. And as it gets closer to the pit, you're going to want to go lighter. Because, again, we don't want to pull the resin, the pit filler, out of the pit. And notice how it's coming off in more like dust as opposed to big chunks and flakes. This is why we use the isopropyl alcohol. Because if we didn't, there could have been oils here on the surface that we couldn't see with our eyes, or another kind of contaminant or contaminants. And this resin, if there was contaminants underneath it, it would prevent it from bonding correctly, and it would just flake off. And then what would happen is, as it was just flaking off in big chunks, again, you can pull that pit filler out that you just cured and filled into the pit, which you don't want to do, because if you do that, then you're going to have to do the pit filler and mylar tab and curing process all over again. All right. And we're going to wipe any of this excess resin away. On to the final step. We are going to polish the repair area just to get a nice, clear, transparent finish. And then we're going to clean the glass. That is all you need. That's honestly more than you need. Doesn't take much. And now we're going to clean the glass just using normal glass cleaner. At this point, the chip is all cured, so you don't have to worry about getting any contamination in it because it is sealed off now. And here is the after photo. As you can see, it has practically disappeared at this point. You will notice a little scar left over. That is normal. There is always going to be a scar left over. Usually it's just going to be a little gray, less transparent mark compared to the glass, where we drilled into the glass and filled that pit or that impact point. That's the scar that's going to be left over. But remember, the main point of windshield repair is to prevent the rock chip from spreading, and that we have done for sure. All right, thank you for tuning in for how to repair a rock chip, learning the basics. I hope it was helpful, and be on the lookout for the next course that will be coming out here on Glassmasters Hub. Feel free to leave a comment or give any feedback. If you have a question, please comment it below, and I will respond to you as soon as I can.